Welcome to Narratives and Nightcaps, Books, Beverages, and Author Conversations. Today, I'm joined by author Mary Watson to talk about her newest psychological thriller, The Cleaner. Hello, Mary. Welcome to the show and congratulations.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me here today.
Absolutely. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. How have things been since The Cleaner released? It just came out in the US about a month ago, but I know it's been out in the UK longer. How's it been?
It's been fantastic. I've had some really great feedback. My mother-in-law read it and loved it, which is a good sign. No, it's been fantastic. It's been really good.
I'm so happy to hear that. It's been fun to see some of the other conversations on social media that I know that you've been able to have. And before we introduce to everyone else that may not know what the cleaner is about just yet, can you tell us a little bit about your nightcap or nightcaps that you have paired for this?
Okay, so I thought that the best nightcap for Esme, that would match Esme's personality, is coffee, instant coffee, laced with whiskey. That's absolutely the perfect pairing. Yeah.
Hands down. But today you're just sipping normal coffee.
Today, well, it's only 10 o'clock in the morning, so we're sipping normal coffee.
Exactly, exactly. Well done. That is sort of the trick with this podcast is we're often talking about those things, but we're like, but it's 10 in the morning, or in some cases I've been like, but it's 7:30 in the morning. So not today. Well, let's jump right in. Can you give a quick overview of The Cleaner and what readers can expect from this story?
Okay, so The Cleaner is about a woman called Esme who travels from some unnamed country to Ireland, and she begins working as cleaner in a sort of quiet neighborhood for three different houses. And she knows that one of the women living in these three houses is responsible for destroying her brother's life. The trouble is, she doesn't know exactly which one of these women is the guilty party. So she gets into their houses, does a bit of snooping, and tries to figure out which one is due for a payback. Um, Trouble is that instead of watching from the sidelines, Esme gets sucked in.
As you know, I think that there's some sort of saying about revenge and when you set out for something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So very well, it's sort of like where do we even begin with this? But I think I'll just start with my favorite question and what I'm always curious about with every author is where did this idea first come to you? What was the inspiration for this story?
So there's always several sparks of inspiration in the beginning. So one of them was being on a neighborhood WhatsApp group and seeing that three different women, all in the same neighborhood, had the same cleaner. And I thought that that was fascinating. I was thinking, wouldn't it be fun if these women had secrets? Because, the kind of way you would see the women in your neighborhood or the people in your neighborhood would be very much superficial, best face on, very kind, very nice to each other. But what the cleaner gets to see is very different. So there is a distinction between our private selves and our public selves. And I think the cleaner has access to the private self. And I found that fascinating that this cleaner would see these women in a way that I didn't have access to. And I just thought that there was so much possibility in that. And then the other was that I started writing this book at the very beginning of lockdown back in 2020. I couldn't really go on with it because I was working on something else under contract at the time. But I wrote the first chapters back then. And there was very much that sense of your house becoming your whole world and your house being like an active participant in your life because that was what we knew. And we were also in Ireland, we were at that time, we could only go within a 2.5 kilometer radius, which is like nothing. And I live close to the lake. So, like, basically, there was a real strong sense of claustrophobia where we couldn't get out of our neighborhood, we couldn't get out of our houses. And I think that that really kind of gets baked into the book, that feeling of the house, the neighborhood, the closeness of it.
Oh, it absolutely does. So it's so interesting that your real life really kind of tied in that
Yeah.
situation for Esme and for these characters. And this is, I would say, is like it's definitely a shift from some of your previous work. So what really prompted that other than these initial sparks? Did you kind of always know that you wanted to write an adult thriller or suspense like this?
My background is quite eclectic in that I started writing literary fiction and then I switched to young adult fantasy, and now I've kind of switched back to psychological thrillers. I did attempt a psychological thriller before, but it ended up being much more literary fiction than psychological thriller. So I wouldn't really count that as psychological thriller. But I think, I always say that I write the book I want to read. So I'm always writing the thing that I'm looking for on the shelves when I go to the library or to the bookshop or whatever. This is what I want to read. So it's kind of a hunger. I'm responding to a hunger that's inside me when I start writing these books. So at the moment, my hunger is absolutely psychological fiction, psychological thrillers, and that's what I'm writing.
Well, I love that. Well, and we always talk about being mood readers too, and it's almost like
Yes,
you can be a mood writer at the same
yes,
time.
yes.
Very good. Well, I have to jump then. So, what books have you also been reading lately, or are there any that helped fuel your creativity while writing this one?
So there are loads. I think one of the books that I absolutely loved and I thought was totally innovative and just did the whole psychological thriller in a totally different way was Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister.
Yes.
Brilliant book. I also loved The Death of Us by Abigail Dean. I think that was just so beautifully written, beautifully put together, very subtle, very quiet, but at the same time incredibly powerful. I loved Night Watching by Tracy Sierra. So, and I love Lisa Jewell books, particularly the most recent one,
Of course.
Don't Let Him In. So that those kind of particularly like books that kind of play at a very subtle, unconscious level and is beginning to build a sense of menace, and that menace grows and grows, and the reader gets more and more unsettled until, bam, something happens in the end. Those are the books I most love reading.
Oh, I completely agree with you. And then one of my other co-hosts too, Megan, that is psychological thriller is what she reads constantly. So I know she'll be so excited to listen to this episode and to read The Cleaner. Those are fantastic recommendations. Some that I've read, some that I immediately need to put on my list as well. Do you so on that note too, are you one of the do you like to immerse yourself sort of in the tone that you're looking for like while you're writing, or when you're specifically writing, are you someone that needs to separate it too?
That's a funny question. So I find that I don't like to read psychological thrillers when I'm in the thick of writing them, when I'm really drafting or revising at a very intensive level. But what I do is listen to them. So I listen to them on audiobooks, and
Oh,
that somehow doesn't get into my head in the same way that reading them physically would do. And when it comes to reading, now I find that the books I'm reading would be fantasy while I'm actually drafting, because that's not what I'm writing.
that's so fascinating to me. It makes sense, but it's totally fascinating to me. I will say psychological thrillers too, when it comes to audiobooks, I'm very there are certain genres where my other co-host Emily, she likes to call them eyeball books and ear books. And so we're like, okay, certain genres for me are eyeball books, but then other genres are earball books, and then others cross. And
Yes,
psychological thriller is one for me that definitely can be both, which
yes.
is really interesting. Like so I can read them or I like to audiobook them. I remember I was listening to, First Lie Wins,
Oh, I love.
and I isn't that so good?
Yes,
First Lie Wins, and I was driving. I was driving to a book festival that was, like, 7 hours away, so it's a long drive, and in the middle of nowhere. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I I really had to stop to use the restroom at one point, and I've been listening to this book, and I stopped at the most questionable place, and I'm in like, at the climax, and I was just like, I'm done." Like, this is where it ends for me because I'm in the midst of this book. So that was one maybe I should have just, like, hit pause and switched to something lighter while I was driving, but I was so captivated by that story. I remember, texting Megan when I'd stopped, and I was like, "You have to read or listen to this, do something."
yes.
Um, so tell me a little bit about your story creation process. Are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? How do you go about your craft?
I think probably when I first started writing, I would have been much more of a pantser, but now definitely to have a plot, but it's complicated because I find that in order to find the plot, I have to write first. So I have what is called the false beginning, where I will start writing, and it's just a way of getting to know the characters, getting to know the world, and I know that this is probably not going to make it anywhere. It's just going to be thrown out along the way, but I have to do that in order to find out where I'm going. And then once I've kind of gone a little way with that, I can start making an outline. And at that point, I have to find out the end first. So I have to know what the destination is. And I kind of write to the destination point, and then I create an outline. But I call it a living outline because as I write more, I discover more doors that need to be opened, more things that I could possibly explore, more answers, and often twists are found through that kind of experiential process rather than thinking them out. I can never think out a twist really in advance. I need to find the twist. And so then the outline changes and becomes a different outline. And that's basically the way that seems to have worked for me. And I think everybody has to find what works for them. And that's kind of what's worked for me now.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. I mean, talking with it's so I love hearing how everybody has kind of their own take on their process with writing. And I think that that's really powerful and an important reminder, especially for aspiring writers,
Yeah,
that like it's good to listen to what other people are doing and maybe take like little pieces of other people's processes to figure out if it works for you, and then
exactly.
in doing so you're going to end up finding out what your process is, your
Exactly.
unique process. You're going to uncover that, just like you said, you uncover little twists. You probably learn things about your characters that you
Yeah,
didn't have established as you're writing. You have to do that with your own process too.
yeah, exactly.
Were there any particular challenges that you faced with the cleaner specifically?
Hmm. I suppose my enduring challenge is that I always try to write really intricate books. So I like things that have got a lot packed into them, and I think that that's not always easy for readers. And I think that kind of what really works for me is that I have a brilliant editor and agent who are both very good at kind of helping me make keep some level of intricacies, but without overcomplicating things, you know? So it's like how to make it intricate and interesting because it has to be interesting to me. And if it's just kind of a very plain, straight, that's not interesting to me. So it's that balance of interesting to me, but also accessible to other people. So that's always something that I need to, that's what I probably find most challenging is to not overstuff it, not overcomplicate it, because that's what I always, that's my instinct. But I've got a very, very good editor who really helps me kind of make sure that I don't go too far that way.
It takes a team. It takes a
It really
team.
does take a team, yeah.
But on that note, in terms of the intricacies, there are some really fun ones that you explore in the cleaner, sort of the darker side and the complexities of womanhood, societal roles, revenge, like you mentioned, and our behaviors, what really motivates us to do certain things. You also mentioned like the element of invisibility, your hidden self versus the version that you let other people see. What drew you to these ideas specifically?
I think a lot of those ideas were kind of discovered while I was writing the book. So I think firstly, when you start with a cleaner, particularly one that comes from another country, and in this day and age where there's a lot of talk about immigration and all of that stuff, there's a lot of noise and agitating around it. I think that it's not neutral territory. I think that there's already like a political background, there's baggage that it's difficult to ignore. So even just by invoking the fact that this is a brown skin cleaner who comes in from another country to a country that is predominantly white and does invisible labor, I'm already talking about a power dynamic that's there and established. So you can't, when I find I can't ignore it, like I need to. And now the book is not some kind of treatise on power and labor and whatever. It is just there and it's implicit, but it's kind of touched on lightly, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say like the assumptions that
Yeah,
people
yeah.
make with that topic for sure.
and
Well,
and also sorry, just that it was actually something that I realized that I could use, the fact that she has an accent, that she is invisible, and that then becomes part of the plot. And that was really fun, that I could actually take these things and make it something useful that makes a point, that furthers the plot but also subtly makes a point.
Absolutely. There's so much more to who she is and where she's going to go and what's driving her too, what's motivating her, but that that people don't see
Yeah,
on the surface either because they can't or they don't want to. Like
yeah,
there's a little bit of both, I would say.
yeah.
How do you go about writing? This is so interesting to me and I love them because I love messy characters. But how do you go about writing messy characters, but especially ones that like we can relate to in some way, or at the very least we can sympathize with them, but yet they're going to make mistakes because I always it's sort of like when I'm reading something and you know a character, you make a decision, you're like, "No, don't do that."
Yeah.
So, like, you as a writer, I would say you're probably very attached to Esme and your other characters. So how do you go about writing these messy characters and really building them even if you have an emotional attachment to them?
Well, people are messy, aren't we? We're never one thing. Like, I mean, all of us are capable of all kinds of things in push, depending on what the situation might be. And I think this is kind of my most enduring question while writing. It's kind of one of the question that's followed me over from book to book to book, which is what makes ordinary people do bad things? It absolutely fascinates me. Is it because they've got faulty wiring? Is it because they're pushed to a corner? Is it because something has happened? Is it survival and urge to protect? I don't know. And I think this is the thing that I'm endlessly fascinated by in different books, is that what makes an ordinary person do a bad thing? I think pushed to an extreme, we can all do something outside of our nature, or all do something that we think we might not be able to do otherwise, um, depending on circumstance. I think that's one point, is that trying to make a study of it, almost trying to find out what actually is this. And I think that's what I really liked about Esme, is that she is absolutely messy. She's got all kinds of grey morality going on. I mean, because it's not exactly nice to go snooping in people's houses, but at the same time, there is an understanding of she's doing this for a reason. She's doing this because she's a bit broken, that there's something that's happened. And yeah, so I love playing with that, and I think that's really what shines in the psychological thriller. This the kind of dark side of human nature of ordinary people, and I think that's something that I absolutely love playing with while writing.
I completely agree. It's a topic that I've always found is so interesting because it's so complex. It's so layered
Mhm.
and there's so many different directions you can go with it. I mean, I think about your book and then a couple of the other authors who have written in the psychological thriller space that I've been able to talk to, and I just love hearing like your different take on digging into humanity
Yeah,
and what drives us and I mean, psychology, it's so interesting, and I think that, fiction literature is just so powerful and really helping us to, like, explore that, but also empathize with characters and really see what pushes the limits with that too, so,
yeah. And
very
also play out things that we might not be able to play out in real life. So, for example, I mean, I would never travel to another country and extract revenge on somebody that, you know what I mean? I would never do that myself, but it's actually so much fun to do it in a book. So,
100%, I completely Yes, you get to, for a moment, be somebody else that
exactly.
in a healthy way.
In a healthy way, exactly.
Um, what would you say another one of my favorite questions, do you have a scene that was your favorite to write that maybe doesn't spoil it for people that still need to read?
I actually quite enjoyed writing the romance scenes. Now, it's not well, it is a romantic book in some ways, but a very kind of romance with teeth. It's not a violins and roses kind of love story, but there is romance in the book in different forms. And I actually really enjoyed writing the kind of burgeoning romance that happens there. And I think part of that is because it actually, at that point, that is one of the places where Esme is actually quite vulnerable, because she's suddenly getting this attention, and it's kind of, it could almost destabilize her because it's not what she was expecting, and she's trying to use it, but at the same time, is she wielding it? Is it wielding her? So I enjoyed writing that.
What kind of conversations or reflections do you hope readers have after finishing The Cleaner?
I suppose the question about human nature, about likability, what makes somebody likable, is it a matter of how I'm looking at somebody, or is it on them, or is it on me? Because sometimes people that we don't find likable are because we're used to seeing the world in certain ways, and they don't match that. So just, I suppose, question of perspective and likability, and questions of what would you do in order to protect and help and, you know, avenge the ones that you love. And also questions about, I suppose, in a lighter way, in a very subtle way, kind of the bigger questions about people moving around in different countries and the kind of agitation that you get in a lot these days. I think in Ireland at the moment, there's been some. It's so funny because when I started writing this book, it was very much, it felt very settled. It didn't feel like there was that kind of far right agitation that was happening in other places had reached Ireland quite yet. But it's absolutely come to the fore this year. People are being physically attacked. It's gotten quite ugly. So it's quite interesting to see that, and then to write a book which kind of has a character that reflects that experience. And even though it's not something that is actively explored, hopefully, just reading a book with a character like that can give people access into a different kind of perspective.
I think that that's really important. It's so there are many elements to this. It's definitely an important one, and it speaks a lot to today, and understanding a different perspective, which I am a firm believer is like one of the basic and most important things about reading in general is to
Yes, truly.
understand different perspectives, and that's why I mean we always say, you like, read whatever you love. If you're reading, if you're picking up a book, like, I guess at the end of the day, I'm just happy you're picking up a book, but I also love exploring different genres and different authors too, because that's how we do understand and learn about different perspectives. Um, I love what you said about likability too, that it's so interesting, like, and speaks a lot to, the world today. Do you not like someone just because they are different from you,
Yeah,
even though you don't know anything about them really, or where they come from, or what their beliefs are, or what they value, or who they are. But then I was thinking about it too. I was like, there's this element of likability or people not liking you because of that, because of just differences that they can't see past those differences or those prejudices, anything like that. Or do you see something in you too, in that other person that maybe you don't like about yourself? And it's like
interesting. Yeah,
that
yeah,
person is a reminder of
yeah,
things you
absolutely.
don't like.
Yeah, completely. And I think, like, it could be absolutely that, where there's something about the personality of the person that you're like, I don't want to have to face this because I can see it in me as well.
Yep,
Completely.
I can see it in me, or then they could know the real me, because
Yeah.
if I see that in them, I don't want them to know that side that I keep hidden or invisible, all of that too. Um, let's see. Who do you imagine as sort of your ideal reader for this book? I mean, you kind of listed off some books already that I think if readers enjoy those, they will too. But who would you say is the ideal reader for The Cleaner?
I mean, I suppose that would be the kind of readership. So I think that there is. I mean, I read really widely, so I would happily pick up like all kinds of different books
Me
and
too.
different kinds of thrillers, and I like fast paced thrillers that kind of zip through things, and I like the slower, more. But my favorite would be the ones that have the kind of menace build that I was talking about earlier. So I think that people who prefer kind of a more slow burn, intricate stories that trick you a little bit as you read them. That would be the kind of audience. So I would try to probably consider Lisa Jewell, Tracy Sierra. Um, yeah, those would be the readership that I think would get on with
And
this stuff.
in terms of any upcoming projects, are you still very much in the psychological thriller space and mood, or are you eager to explore other genres in the future?
I think I'm sitting here for a while. I've got another one coming out next year, which I'm still doing the final edits on that at the moment, and then I'm plotting something else for Beyond, and it's very much keeping with the psychological thriller. I'm very happy here at the moment.
I love that. Can you share anything about the one that you're
Well,
working at final edits right now?
what I can say is that it's a thriller about a workplace romance gone wrong, which I'm told is the very definition of a workplace romance. So,
It's true. They do say not to start those because
yeah,
it can only
exactly.
end badly.
Don't dip your pen in the company ink. And yeah,
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What sort of advice, I mean, just given like your incredible career and writing and all of that, what advice would you have for aspiring writers?
I suppose my advice is always, and it's actually what you said earlier, that you've got to find what works for you. You know that there's so much advice out there. Like there's so much, and it's quite easy to think, oh my goodness, I need to whip out the first draft. I can't, and then you'll have people who say no, but I can't do that. So it's you've got to find what works for you. Some people whipping out the first draft works better. I think that that's a good idea myself because it means you have something to work with. For other people, that doesn't work at all. They need to kind of go through it more carefully and considerately and work at a slower pace. But if that's what works for you, then that's what works for you. You've got to find the system that works for you, and you've got to like listen to the advice and then push it away and take what works for you.
Well said. Do you have any sort of events or other things coming up? I know I've seen like a couple on your social media and you're spending time in Canada right now,
Yeah,
so you're not even at home, but do you have any other events coming up other than our podcast?
yeah. So I was out and about doing some events in Canada this week, and now for the next few days I'm on holiday, and then there's something coming up in October. I'll be at the Murder One Festival in October,
Oh,
um,
how
which is in
fun.
Ireland. Yeah.
That is going to be amazing, I'm sure. Okay, I'm gonna look out for pictures, so I hope you share a few. Where can readers and writers, listeners, where is the best place for them to connect with you online?
At the moment, I'm only really active on Instagram, and I try not to go in there. I try to avoid it as much as possible because I don't know how good social media is for our well-being.
It's
But
not.
it's not. But I am there, and that is the best place to try and catch me is on Instagram, and it is at Mary M_Watson.
We will link that in the podcast notes. I'll also link to your website as well so that everyone can see all of your books and keep in touch there. I just tangent, but totally agree with you on social media. It's an important part of what we do for the podcast and everything, but I don't know how great it truly
Yeah.
is for all of
I,
us.
I used to love the old Instagram where you just kind of like put a picture of leaves blowing in the wind kind of thing, and that kind of low key Instagram. Whereas now it's become so frantic and hectic, and I don't enjoy it as much as I used to about 8 years ago. It used to be
I,
fun.
I was thinking something similar not long ago. I was like, can we bring back the old Instagram
Yeah,
and less pressure with it,
yeah.
and they just keep making changes to
I know.
different things, and I'm like, nobody's
What is
asking for this.
this?
No one's asking. Please stop.
Yeah,
Mary, it's been so fun chatting with you and about the cleaner, which, as we mentioned, is available now. When your next book is ready and out, I hope that you will consider coming back on
I
Narratives
would
and
love that.
Nightcaps.
Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Of course. Cheers.
Thanks.